How many of you, well, this is going to be two questions. How many of you can remember your very first home that you bought? Raise your hand. Put them up there. All right. How many of you are looking forward to the day for the first home that you can buy? Yeah. Okay, keep those hands up right there for those ones. Take note of those people and pray for those people around you that are praying for that. That's just a blessing to get your first home, isn't it? I look back and I remember our first home. It was on 11th Place, North 11th Place, just off North Pine Street, and a little 1,300 square foot home. It had been remodeled and added onto, so the biggest room in the entire house was the master bedroom. It was massive, and our yard in that house was huge. Our backyard was huge, and it was a blessing. I remember when we got into that home, we had 3 daughters, and we had so much fun. In the backyard, we had a trampoline, we had a badminton area, we had a deck, and we would have barbecues out there when the weather was permitting. Inside, just the times I remember with Christmas, we bought like this couch that barely fit in our living room. It was like the most gargantuan Godzilla-sized couch I think ever existed. And it literally took up everything. But just as families, watching movies, watching shows, just so many good memories about that house. And yet I remember the first day we moved into the house, being in the backyard with some friends of ours, and they were just talking about how much that house was a blessing to us. And I made some comment like, yeah, this is just a great first step to what I'm praying for the Lord to do for our family. They said, what are you talking about? I said, well, this isn't the house that we're planning to stay in. This is just a good first step for us to get to where we're hoping to be. And man, that couple lit me up. They were just like, man, you are so unthankful, Tim. God just did this for you. And they just kind of laid into me. And I wasn't trying to be unthankful. I was very thankful for that first home. But what I knew was it was not the home we were going to end up in. It was merely our first home. And several years later, we were able to sell that first home. We made some great money off of it. And we were able to buy the house I grew up in from my parents. And, I bought it, kicked them out. And that home, the home we're in now, has been an even bigger blessing to our family over the years. I want you to have that in mind as we are looking at this story today out of Genesis. And it's always a good thing to have in mind as we are reading the Bible as a whole. Because one of the themes of the Bible is that God will provide a home for us, but He has another home planned for us in the future. If you haven't been with us the last few weeks, I apologize. I don't have time to go all the way back and fill you in on this story. So I'm going to trust that either A, you know this story, or B, you're just going to go read it on your own later on. But this is where we pick up the sermon series we've been in Genesis chapter 46 at verse 1. So Israel took his journey with all that he had and came to Beersheba and offered sacrifices to God, the God of his father. And God spoke to Israel in visions of the night and said, Jacob, Jacob. And he said, here I am. And then he said, I am God, the God of your father. Do not be afraid to go down to Egypt, for there I will make you into a great nation. I myself will go down with you to Egypt, and I will also bring you up again, and Joseph's hand shall close your eyes. The beginning of the story where we pick it up today, we have an incredible promise that God gives to this man Jacob, whose name was changed to Israel. I just love this when you see this. What we read last week was that Joseph has revealed himself to his brothers. He has let them know, hey, in the midst of this famine, God has worked everything out so that you can come down to Egypt where I'm in control of things and you'll be blessed. There's food here and you can come live with me and make a new home here. God provided for that family when they were in need. And you look at this, it's interesting. Israel, or Jacob, at the beginning of this, is doing something that he learned from his father and from his grandfather. As he goes down to Beersheba, which is the southernmost area of the land of Canaan, before you get into Egypt, he offers sacrifices to God. He stops and he takes time to remember the Lord. He stops and he takes time to remember the Lord. Sometime we're going to be starting a Saturday night service. When we move into the new building, we're going to need to do that. In here, there's still room to grow where if I can talk some of you into going to second service, we'll be able to balance things out, and there's room here to grow. But eventually, we're going to need to do a Saturday evening service. And I'm looking forward to being able to do that. But for me, it's not going to replace the Sunday morning service. Why? Because I love taking the first hours of the first day of the week just to set them aside on a consistent basis. Why? To remember the Lord. For me, it helps me get into a rhythm throughout the week of stopping first thing to remember the Lord. And if you look at Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, it was a theme of their life, especially when they got older. They began to recognize the need for that. As he stops to remember the Lord, how great this is that God comes to him and says his name, Jacob. But notice it's not once, it's twice. Jacob. Jacob. That happens at different times in the Bible. We see it first with Abraham. When God speaks to Abraham, he did it the same way, not saying his name once, but twice. Abraham, Abraham. Later in the Bible, we see it with somebody else. Samuel. Samuel. When God calls the young man Samuel into service for him. And even when you go to the New Testament, you see it. Once, when a lady heard the sweet words, Martha, Martha. And another man who heard Paul, Paul. Love it. It is a theme that you find throughout the Bible, and every time it is in an important place where God is making a big shift. And what is the shift that is happening right now? Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob have all been told that God would give them the land of Canaan as their inheritance. Now, Jacob is looking at the famine in the land and realizing, I can't stay here. We're going to die if we stay here. But with my father and my grandfather, when they went to Egypt, it wasn't good. Bad things happened, and God didn't really want them to do that. So am I now in the plan of God? Is this okay? And how beautiful that the Lord actually comes to him and reassures him. And just says, yes. In fact, not only are you to go down there, but guess what? I will be there with you. I am going to go down there with you. And that was something in these days that would have been huge for Jacob to hear. Why? Because the idea was that there was pantheons of gods, and they were all localized in different areas. But what we learn in the Bible is that there is a God that is different from all the little gods. He is the creator God. He is the great I am. He is the one who is everywhere. And so this reassurance to Jacob, you can go down there and don't fear the gods of the Egyptians because I'm going with you. If you want a good read, jump to Exodus and see how with Jacob's ancestors, God proved just that. Through the plagues, not only that he was there, but that he was mightier than every little god there in Egypt. And each one of those 10 plagues shows that against the different gods of Egypt. Incredible thing that you see here. But he's also told, you're not going to stay there. You're not going to stay there. I will bring you back up out of the land of Egypt. Why? Because that was just their home away from home for a little while. But God had another plan. Verse 5, the story goes on. Then Jacob set out from Beersheba. The sons of Israel carried Jacob, their father, their little ones, their wives, in the wagons that Pharaoh had sent to carry him. They also took their livestock and their goods, which they had gained in the land of Canaan, and came into Egypt. Jacob and all his offspring were with him, his sons and his sons' sons with him, his daughters and his sons' daughters, all his offspring he brought with him into Egypt. Now, these are the names of the descendants of Israel who came into Egypt. Incidentally, this is the exact same way that the book of Exodus starts. Jacob and his sons, Reuben, Jacob's firstborn, and the sons of Reuben. Now, please, I apologize. I'm going to read a bunch of names, and I will butcher them, all right? So please don't come up afterwards and correct me and be like, you were wrong on that, because I know, all right? Encourage one another and build each other up. Verse 9, and the sons of Reuben, Hanok, Palu, Hezron, and Carmi. The sons of Simeon, Jemuel, Jamin, Ohab, Jachin, Zohar, and Shaul, the sons of a Canaanite woman. The sons of Levi, Gershon, Kohath, and Merari. The sons of Judah, Onan, Shelah, Perez, and Zerah. But and Onan died in the land of Canaan. And the sons of Perez were Hezron and Hamuel. The sons of Issachar, Tola, Puvah, Yob, and Shimron. The sons of Zebulun, Sereb, Elon, and Jehiel. These are the sons of Leah, whom she bore to Jacob in Paddan Aram, together with his daughter Dinah. Altogether, his sons and his daughters numbered 33. The sons of Gad, Ziphion, Haggai, Shuni, Esbon, Eri, Arodi, and Areli. The sons of Asher, Emna, Ishvi, Beriah, with Sarah, their sister, and the sons of Beriah, Heber and Malkiel. These are the sons of Zilpah, whom Laban gave to Leah, his daughter, and these she bore to Jacob. 16 persons. The sons of Rachel, Jacob's wife, Joseph and Benjamin. And to Joseph in the land of Egypt were born Manasseh and Ephraim, whom Asnath, the daughter of Potiphera, the priest of On, bore to him. The sons of Benjamin, Bela, Becher, Eshbel, Gera, Naaman, Ehi, Rosh, Hupin, and Ard. These are the sons of Rachel who were born to Jacob, 14 persons in all. The sons of Dan, Hushim. The sons of Naphtali, Jaziel, Guni, Jezer, and Shillem. These are the sons of Bilhah, whom Laban gave to Rachel his daughter, and these she bore to Jacob, 7 persons in all. Why? All the persons belonging to Jacob who came into Egypt, who were his own descendants, not including Jacob's sons' wives, were 66 persons in all. And the sons of Joseph, who were born to him in Egypt, were 2. All the persons of the house who came into Egypt were 70. As Moses writes this, you guys are clapping. He made it through. I trashed that. Couple things. Why did I even bother to read that? I mean, my natural inclination is to try to look good and smart And I did not just do that. I did the opposite. Now, some of you are like, our pastor is incompetent and cannot read. Here's the thing. It's important that we note this. Moses put it in there for two reasons as he was inspired to write. One, the number is 70. And in the Old Testament, it's a number of completion or perfection. Completion or perfection. And he's showing that the God who came to Abraham and Sarah as they were barren and said, out of you will come a nation. He fulfilled his promise. And in the time of his grandson has so many offspring that the number of them is a number of completion or fulfillment. It's highly prophetic, and it's the Bible letting us know that God fulfills his promises every single time. It might not happen in our timeline. It might not happen in the way we think it will happen, or maybe even should happen, but he fulfills every one of his purposes. The story starts out with a promise, and that promise we see part of it fulfilled in this family, this incredible family. Verse 28, he had sent Judah ahead of him to Joseph to show the way before him in Goshen, and they came into the land of Goshen. Then Joseph prepared his chariot and went up to meet Israel, his father, in Goshen. He presented himself to him and fell on his neck and wept on his neck a good while. Israel said to Joseph, "Now let me die, since I have seen your face and know that you are still alive." Joseph said to his brothers and to his father's household, "I will go up and tell Pharaoh and will say to him, 'My brothers and my father's household, who were in the land of Canaan, have come to me. And the men are shepherds, for they have been keepers of livestock. And they have brought their flocks and their herds and all that they have. When Pharaoh calls you and says, 'What is your occupation?' you shall say, 'Your servants have been keepers of livestock from our youth until now, both we and our fathers, in order that you may dwell in the land of Goshen.' Why? For every shepherd is an abomination to the Egyptians." So God is providing a place for Joseph's family, but notice this. His family is a family of shepherds. And the new home that God is providing for them, they will be provided for, but the inhabitants of that land will look at them, and even though they're living next door to each other, will think, "Ew, they're shepherds. How gross. What an abomination." Not the most welcome, right? Not the most welcome. So they will be in this land, but even as they are there, they will be aliens within their own home. It is interesting to note when you go to Exodus, you find Moses, who spends the first 40 years of his life where? In the courts of Pharaoh, living as an Egyptian, but he's not actually Egyptian, he is Hebrew. And God takes him where Moses thought, "I can save my people." God takes him to a place of humility, because where does he spend the next 40 years of his life? In the desert as what? A shepherd. That which was abominable to the house he grew up in. God has a way of humbling us that way. Chapter 47, verse 1, so Joseph went in and told Pharaoh, "My father and my brothers with their flocks and herds and all that they possess have come to the land of Canaan. They are now in the land of Goshen." And from among his brothers he took 5 men and presented them to Pharaoh. Pharaoh said to his brothers, "What is your occupation?" And they said to Pharaoh, "Your servants are shepherds, as our fathers were." And they said to Pharaoh, "We have come to sojourn in the land, for there is no pasture for your servants' flocks. For the famine is severe in the land of Canaan. And now, please let your servants dwell in the land of Goshen." Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Your father and your brothers have come to you. The land of Egypt is before you. Settle your father and your brothers in the best of the land. Let them settle in the land of Goshen. And if you know any able men among them, put them in charge of my livestock." Then Joseph brought in Jacob, his father, and stood him before Pharaoh. And Jacob blessed Pharaoh. And Pharaoh said to Jacob, "How many are the days of the years of your life?" And Jacob said to Pharaoh, "The days of the years of my sojourning are 130 years. Few and evil have been the days of the years of my life, and they have not attained to the days of the years of the life of my fathers in the days of their sojourning." And Jacob blessed Pharaoh and went out from the presence of Pharaoh. Then Joseph settled his father and his brothers and gave them a possession in the land of Egypt, in the best of the land, in the land of Ramses, as Pharaoh had commanded. Joseph provided his father, his brothers, and all his father's household with food according to the number of their dependents. So this story starts with a promise from God, and it's a promise that has been running throughout the book of Genesis. The promise that was given to Abraham, who was a wanderer, was that he would have a family and that he would have land. One is being fulfilled in the family. The other, it's yet to be fulfilled. And you have to go to Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy, and Joshua to read about that. But even though that promise is not fulfilled yet of that land and that home, he provides for him a temporary home until the promised land comes. But it's not going to be easy there. Verse 13, "Now there was no food in all the land, for the famine was severe, so that the land of Egypt and the land of Canaan languished by reason of the famine. And Joseph gathered up all the money that was found in the land of Egypt and in the land of Canaan, in exchange for the grain they bought. And Joseph brought the money into Pharaoh's house. And when the money was all spent in the land of Egypt and in the land of Canaan, all the Egyptians came to Joseph and said, 'Give us food. Why should we die before your eyes? For our money is gone.' And Joseph answered, 'Give your livestock, and I will give you food in exchange for your livestock, if your money is gone.' So they brought their livestock to Joseph, and Joseph gave them food in exchange for the horses, the flocks, the herds, and the donkeys. He supplied them with food in exchange for all their livestock that year. And when that year was ended, they came to him the following year and said to him, 'We will not hide from my lord that our money is all spent. The herds of livestock are my lord's. There is nothing left in the sight of my lord but our bodies and our land. Why should we die before your eyes, both we and our land? Buy us and our land for food, and we with our land will be servants to Pharaoh. And give us seed, that we may live and not die, and that the land may not be desolate.'" Not sounding like a great deal, is it? It's not sounding like a great deal. Two things: it's a better deal than dying. It's what they have to do. And two, this next spring when tax day comes around, maybe don't complain quite as bad. It's not this bad. So Joseph bought all the land of Egypt for Pharaoh, for all the Egyptians sold their fields because the famine was severe on them. The land became Pharaoh's. As for the people, he made servants of them from one end of Egypt to the other. Only the land of the priests he did not buy, for the priest had a fixed allowance from Pharaoh and lived on the allowance that Pharaoh gave them. Therefore, they did not sell their land. Then Joseph said to the people, "Behold, I have this day bought you and your land for Pharaoh. Now here is seed for you, and you shall sow the land. And at a harvest, you shall give a fifth to Pharaoh, and 4/5 shall be your own as seed for the field, and as food for yourselves and your households, and as food for your little ones." And they said, "You have saved our lives. May it please my Lord, we will be servants to Pharaoh." So Joseph made it a statute concerning the land of Egypt, and it stands to this day, as Moses writes it, that Pharaoh should have the fifth. The land of the priests alone did not become Pharaoh's. Verse 27, thus Israel settled in the land of Egypt, in the land of Goshen. And they gained possessions in it, and were fruitful and multiplied greatly. And Jacob lived in the land of Egypt 17 years. So the days of Jacob, the years of his life, were 147 years. I love it. Even as they're there and the famine is going on and everybody is being crushed by the famine and by the taxes, and it's all they can do to just barely get by, God is with this family. You catching this? God's with them. And even in the midst of all this, he is not just providing for them, he is multiplying for them. Not just providing, but multiplying. Let's finish out the chapter. Verse 29, and when the time drew near that Israel must die, he called his son Joseph and said to him, "If now I have found favor in your sight, put your hand under my thigh and promise to deal kindly and truly with me. Do not bury me in Egypt, but let me lie with my fathers. Carry me out of Egypt and bury me in their burying place." And he answered, "I will do as you have said." And he said, "Swear to me." And he swore to him. Then Israel bowed himself upon the head of his bed. Powerful story, and I'm excited. We're coming up in the next few weeks on what I personally think is like the absolute best parts of the book of Genesis. We've been studying it, all this year. We started it in January. We've been going through it. And there's been just blessing after blessing as we've done that, as we've looked and we've learned more about the Bible, as we've learned more about the character of God, as we've learned more about the history of the world. But always the goal of the preacher is to apply this in such a way that it benefits us today. I mean, what does it benefit you if God made a promise to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob that they would have a family and that family grew and it was great? What is it to you if God promised them the land of Canaan, which is now modern day Israel, and that God has fulfilled the promise multiple times and given that land different times, but what does it matter to us? Well, if you were to read Romans 11, and I'm not going to go into the entire chapter, and Ephesians 1, 2, and 3, what you find is this. Through the blood of Jesus Christ, you and I have been adopted into this family. In Romans 11, Paul uses an illustration of an olive tree. An olive tree. And as the tender of the tree looks at it, he sees some of the branches are not producing fruit. There's no olives on them. And so what does he do? He cuts off the branches that should not be on this vine. And then he finds branches from wild olive trees, takes them off the wild trees, and grafts them on to the new tree. which means this. I'm looking at a bunch of wild olives in this place, right? Bunch of wild olives. We've been grafted into this tree. Grafted into this tree. One of my neighbors near me has a tree that is like the wackiest, crazy tree in town, in my opinion. Why? When it blossoms in the spring, it has two different distinct colors of flowers. Why? Because it has branches that are grafted in. And some of the branches produce white flowers and some produce pink. And it's very distinctive between the two. It is absolutely gorgeous being grafted in. The illustration is also given that we have been adopted in to the family. Adopted in. We are not by blood part of Abraham's family if you are not Jewish, but by faith through the blood of Jesus Christ. We are adopted in. If you will, read with me Revelation chapter 7. Revelation 7 is a very mysterious chapter of the Bible. In fact, maybe I could just broaden that out and say all of Revelation is very mysterious. But let me just process something with you for just a minute here out of Revelation 7. This is what we read. After this, I saw 4 angels standing at the 4 corners of the earth, holding back the 4 winds of the earth, so that no wind might blow on the earth or sea or against any tree. Then I saw another angel ascending from the rising of the sun, with the seal of the living God. And he called with a loud voice to the 4 angels who had been given power to harm earth and sea, saying, "Do not harm the earth or the sea or the trees until we have sealed the servants of our God on their foreheads." And I heard the number of the sealed, 144,000, sealed from every tribe of the sons of Israel. 12,000 from the tribe of Judah were sealed, 12,000 from the tribe of Reuben, 12,000 from the tribe of Gad, 12,000 from Asher, 12,000 from Naphtali, 12,000 from Manasseh, 12,000 from Simeon, 12,000 from Levi, 12,000 from Issachar, 12,000 from Zebulun, 12,000 from Joseph, 12,000 from the tribe of Benjamin were sealed. Now, 2 things. This is the same family that we read about earlier. The names might be slightly different, and as we get to the end of Genesis, I'll explain why. But notice this. In this prophecy, as an angel is showing the Apostle John the things that will happen as God's kingdom comes, our home away from home, he says, hey, I'm going to tell you something. I've sealed up 144,000, and they're from these tribes. Now, it's one of the most confusing parts of Revelation because most people want to take this literal. And there's cults that do stuff with it. Jehovah's Witnesses play games with all this and stuff. But this is one of those sections, the more I study Revelation, I'm not sure that this is literal. Why? Because one of the patterns that happens in Revelation is John is told something by the angel, and then when he turns around to look at what he's told, what he sees is not what he heard. The first time you see it is near the beginning, when he is told, hey, John, the Lion of the tribe of Judah is approaching, right? So he hears, Lion, roar, of the tribe of Judah is approaching. But when he turns and looks, does he see the Lion of the tribe of Judah? Yes, but he's not a lion. What he sees is a lamb that has been slain. And it's a pattern that happens all throughout Revelation. What he hears and sees are different. So what he hears are 144,000. right? It's the Jewish people. It's in these perfect numbers that are clean, sort of like the 70 that we read in Genesis. But go to the next verse. After this, I looked, and behold, a great multitude that no one could number, from every nation, from all tribes, all peoples, all languages, standing before the throne and before the Lamb, clothed in white robes with palm branches in their hands, and crying out with a loud voice. Oh, read this one with me. Salvation belongs to our God who sits on the throne and to the Lamb. Amen. We are adopted into this family. We're adopted in. And that's absolutely incredible. You look at this. This promise that was given to Abraham was not just merely given to Abraham. It's given to every face I look at today. And the promise of land, the promise of a home. Brothers and sisters, we're in Egypt right now. We're in Egypt right now, waiting for our true home, the true promised land. As Jesus looked at his disciples and he said, "Let not your hearts be troubled. Believe in God. Believe also in me. In my Father's house are many rooms. If it were not so, would I have told you that I go to prepare a place for you? And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again, and I will take you to myself, that where I am, there you may also be. And you know the way to where I am going." And Thomas said to him, "Lord, we do not know where you are going. How can we even know the way?" And Jesus said to him, "I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me." We're here today. This room is full of people that this is not new to you. This is the reminder you need today, though. You have a family, and it might not be your blood family. It's this family around you. And that's what God is building in this place. His family. Brothers and sisters. This is not your home. And that's why it kind of sucks sometimes. This is not the promised land. He is here with us. He is providing for us. He's nurturing us, but it's hard. This life is hard. And it's lonely. It can be full of anxiety and despair, and at the same time, his blessings are here. And he has given us a family. Brothers and sisters, there is a way to a new home for eternity. And it's through Jesus Christ and him alone.